Well, let's kick it off.
Are these new?
No.
Oh.
Why?
I don't know. It looks new. I haven't been here in a while, I guess.
Well, I don't think you've ever been here with
not
the
in the
new studio.
no, not in the new location. Yeah.
Well, here we are, Tristan Reiman,
Yes.
Spyglass now.
I know. I switched. I made the big move, and I'm so happy about it.
What made you decide to do that?
So I actually was the first brokerage. Once I got my license, was the first one I interviewed with. I interviewed with Ryan, and loved it. And I was like, "This is a great opportunity." I already knew some of his family members who are also in the real estate world, and I thought this is a shoo-in, like, of course. And he was like, "Yeah, we really want a little more seasoned agents." At that time, they weren't in the growth phase. And so I thought to myself, well, if I'm going to work for like that kind of brokerage, a larger brokerage, a brokerage that's local but doing big things, I needed to do well. So I went out and hustled, and I worked for an apartment locating brokerage, but I was doing like one of their only agents doing sales, and had a great year in 2023. And then I thought, okay, now I need to scale. Like, I can't keep with a brokerage that largely is advertising for apartments if I want to break into homes. It just didn't look good. I lost 2 like listing appointments because they kind of had looked at the brand of the brokerage and were like, "You guys do apartments. I have a house." So that was just the eye opener. And as soon as I met with them again, they were like, 100%, come on in. And he even kind of said, like, "I'm sorry at that time, like, we would have brought you on. We just were in a different direction. We were trying to stay small. We were trying to build." And I can see through the management team that they have there that that's exactly what they were doing. Like, their team is so strong. The people that have been there for a long time, they have such good culture. And it was just like organically created. It doesn't feel forced. I absolutely love it. I think it's like a perfect fit for me. And
well, shout out to Ryan Rodenbeck and Johnny Mack.
Yes, love them. And Sonny.
Sonny also.
Joey
Matt
on the management team too. Love all of them. Yeah, love them. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, we, I believe this is your 3rd time on. And before we, turned everything on, we talked about, well, you purchased a home recently, so congratulations.
Yes, I did.
The reason that I bring that up is because you kind of wanted to talk a little bit about solicitation, and by that meaning what happens when you buy a home regarding the amount of mail you get, the amount of people coming to your home, the amount of people that are trying to ultimately sell you something.
Yeah, I think it was an interesting topic because I do consider real estate agents as in sales, even though that's like the 4-letter word nobody wants to talk about. But it was totally different when I moved into a house, and I thought that people coming door to door was like the dark
thing of the
ages.
past.
Yeah, it's like I didn't think people still did that. I know that telemarketing isn't really a thing anymore, even though it still feels like I get calls from that too. But people were coming like crazy, and I found myself getting excited. I was like, kind of like, when you're an adult and you're like, oh, this is an adult thing. Like, I got a new vacuum cleaner. This is exciting. And now it's like, yeah, I have a house, of course. Knock on my door, ring the doorbell. So it felt kind of exciting to me, but instantly my partner was like, why are these people knocking every 5 seconds? I mean, it was like literally like multiple a day. Roofing, solar, hail damage, pest control, cleaning services, lawn care, like everything, all different companies. And honestly, I see the person when they come to the door. I don't see like, oh, they want my money.
Right.
I just see a business that's trying to grow, trying to scale, much like I do in real estate. And I just had conversation with them. Now, the only time I got annoyed by it is when the conversation was like that push. So in my mind, like a good sales conversation is if I say, hey, this is what I'm offering, and you're like, oh, yeah, we had been thinking about that. Not sure we're ready to make a move now, but can you give me your information? And we go on from there. Oh, yeah, thank you. Have a great day. Because it's a long game. But the few that solicited that were like, well, why not? And they'd continue. And, well, why aren't you curious about pest control? It's coming. And then they start the fear sales of like, well, there's probably over 200 bugs in your walls right now. And, I'm just kind of like, oh, my God. That just rubbed me so the wrong way that my mindset was like, okay, get me out of this conversation, and I want to call your competitor because I do want pest control services.
Right.
But I don't want it from somebody that's that pushy.
Yeah.
So I was curious to come on with you because I know you always have a strong opinion about these things, and I wanted to know, like, what do you feel about solicitation in our industry, but more importantly, just in general?
So every time I try to go to all of my closings. I go to all my closings when I'm in town. The only time I miss them is if I'm out of town. And one of the things that I do at the end of closing is kind of go over a couple of touch points, and one of them is solicitation, because when you purchase a home, that the fact that you have purchased a home, that information becomes public information. I mean, they don't know what you know, Texas is a non-disclosure state, so they don't know what you paid for the home or anything along those lines, but people are made aware of a title transfer. And so that is the why. Like, why am I getting all of this, right? And then from there, it is also public information on who did your loan. And a lot of solicitation companies will send mail that appears as though it's coming on behalf of the lender, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when you read it, you know, if you really read it, you can see that it's not from the lender, but it's like one of those things, you know, the omission of facts isn't a lie type
Yeah.
of thing. So,
Mm-hmm.
but people will glance over it quickly and they think it's coming from me. So I get a ton of phone calls, or even people will take photos of things and say, "Is this from you? Is this from you?"
Mm-hmm.
And so the reason that I mention all of it is exactly what you're describing right now, whether it's that push or the word I hear a lot is scam, right? So before we came on, I said, "Gosh, I had this conversation with my dad just yesterday." So my dad lives down in San Antonio, and he loves feeding the squirrels, and so they buy peanuts in bulk and feed like a neighborhood full of squirrels. And he was online. I don't know how he found this, but there was a company that was selling a 75-pound bag of peanuts for like $75. And he was like, "Oh my God, this is an amazing deal."
Mm-hmm.
So he goes and like puts it in his cart and everything along those lines. And it turns out that the shipping on a 75-pound bag of peanuts is like $75. So he's like, "Oh, what a scam. You know, at $150 for a 75-pound bag, that's like I could get that at HEB.
Yeah.
This company's trying to run a scam."
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, I literally had this like argument. I'm like, well, it's not a scam. I mean, they're selling, somebody has to be paid
Ship
to
it.
ship, you know, there's a service that's being provided, and they're
Mm-hmm.
shipping a 75-pound bag is not light. A
Mm-hmm.
75-pound bag of peanuts, somebody has to be paid for that.
Yeah.
He's like, "Well, I called the company." You know, he's retired and has nothing better to do.
I love it.
So he's like, "I called the company and I was like, I think it's kind of messed up that you guys are, offering this 75-pound bag. What do I need to do to get free shipping?" So obviously they're like, "Oh, yeah, we'll provide free shipping. The bag will cost $150."
Oh my God.
So now he's like, "Well, that's the same as if I buy the 75-pound bag with
Yeah.
$75 worth of shipping." And he was so mad that he called me.
That is so funny.
And so I go back to like, one of the other things that gets mailed to you when you purchase is that there are companies out there that will file your homestead exemption for you.
Mm-hmm.
And I've like stopped escrow agents when they're like, "Listen, you're going to have companies that are going to offer to file your homestead exemption. It's a scam. You can do it yourself." I say, "It's not a scam. That's
Yeah.
not a scam.
It's a service.
It's a service."
Yeah.
Exactly.
Whether you find it valuable or not.
Right. I
That's-
could change my own oil.
Yeah.
Right. I don't. And I
Yeah.
pay a premium because
It's a scam.
it's not a, right. It's not a scam. So going back to like solicitation, I definitely want to like go over all of those topics, like what's a scam and what's not a scam. Number
Mhm.
one, like to your point, okay, I don't mind, someone coming to me and like telling me a service they can provide, but you're right. If they're like too pushy to the point where it's like, okay, now you're just wasting my time. I've already kind of told
Exactly.
you no.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, going back to the whole scam thing, I think we kind of covered that. There's a lot of things that are coming in the mail and they're not scams. Another one of them is life insurance, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they pitch it as mortgage protection services.
Yeah, I just got this the other day.
Yeah, it's a fancy way, they sell it like, "Listen, we're going to give you a mortgage protection service that will cover your mortgage in full in the event that you were to die."
Mhm.
Well, newsflash, that's just a life insurance policy. But when people hear life insurance, they're like, "Nope, don't want it." They hear mortgage protection services, and clients are like, "Okay, I want to hear more about that."
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I mean, those are a lot of the things that you're going to get. And again, not scams, just solicitation. But I'll agree with you. Like, I don't really mind, hearing pitches and stuff. To be completely honest, I sometimes try to take things from some of these
Yeah,
salespeople.
that's the same exact way I am. Yeah.
I utilize it as like a learning opportunity because door-to-door sales, although I've never done it, I would envision is like as tough as it gets,
Mm-hmm.
right?
It
And
is.
real estate agents, I mean, good ones will door knock from time to time, especially
Mhm.
in like a neighborhood that they live in. And so you're
Yeah.
going to people and you're knocking on their door and I mean, I would not want to do it, but
Yeah.
you know,
But so that's interesting. I love that you just said that because I was thinking to myself, I was like, well, I'm in solicitation. That's probably why I'm okay with it because I
mhm.
I get that side of it. And I was thinking, would I go door to door? And I 100% would go to door to door. And not because of why most people would do it. Like, I want to go door to door because it's obviously proven. These companies are spending the money to do it, whether it's a mailer or sending out people full time to do that. But I would do it because I want to talk to people.
Yeah,
I want to get that literal feedback from somebody that says like, no, we're not considering a house. We live in this house and we have this interest rate, so we're not interested in selling. Great. Now I have feedback. That makes sense. But I think a lot of people um, are just shutting the door because they're expecting the scam. Like you said, it's not a scam that a realtor's reaching out to them, but it's so easy to say, well, I already know a realtor. Well,
sure.
it's like I know I know all the restaurants in Austin if I search it on Google. It doesn't mean I've sat down with a realtor. I've really like looked at my position and if I am in a position to buy, if I would even consider buying, is new construction, versus renting more or could I get an investment property? You have you really talked to your friend who's the realtor in a business way, not
Right.
just at a dinner party? It's like, oh yeah, we thought about
That's a
buying.
great point.
It's so interesting. So I was like, why, um, as a realtor, do I feel afraid sometimes to go door to door when it's like the person is afraid to answer the door? It's like
Well,
we're
that's
both
exactly what
just.
it is. I think it's more of just like a knee jerk reaction in regards to just I think it's a combination of like insecurity in regards to talking to strangers, and then the other part of it is like I'll be the first to admit I've definitely been like door knocked at the absolute wrong time.
Yeah.
Like either I'm on the phone or there's like I'm doing like a household like work project, and I'm kind of already pissed off because we all know that like nothing goes as planned when you're like doing that backsplash or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So I think that's part of it, and then I think because one of the things I always think about, you know, in my early career, I started in this business as a telemarketer at 15 years old. So it's kind of like the phone equivalent of like door knocking, and so I've got a really good you know taste for what that is, and it was always interesting to me that I would talk to people and we would get leads sometimes. We wouldn't just necessarily cold call. These were people that willingly went online or filled out some sort of, mailer,
Hmm.
put their accurate information, and then we would call them and say, "Hey, we saw that you applied, for information about a mortgage. Just want to, connect with
Follow
you,
up. Yeah.
follow up, have a basic conversation." And people would be like, "No, no, 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 I'm good. I'm good. I'm good." And my like rebuttal would be, "Well, listen, like you filled out a lot of information. Like,
Yeah.
there had to be something
Some
that,
interest. Yeah.
that you wanted to know. Like, I'm
Yeah.
not here to
No
like,
expectation.
yeah,
Yeah.
like
You're
I
not.
can't jump through the phone and steal your wallet.
Yeah.
Like,
I'm
what?"
not. We're not charging per minute.
And I can't get over the amount of people that would go, "Okay, yeah, you're right. I do have some questions." And so what that helped me identify is like there is absolutely this knee jerk reaction, and I truthfully don't know the exact reason why. Um, Again, these are people that filled stuff out. So is it just like is it fear of talking to a stranger? Is it like an insecurity? Is it like this is just what we're like raised as
So
people?
yeah,
Like I don't know.
I was thinking about this on the way down because I think a lot of it there's a lot of different theories and I'm sure it's different for multiple people, but I think most of it is just everybody is a scammer. So it's like we put everybody in a box. So if anybody's knocking on my door, they're giving me something I don't need unless
Hmm.
it's the Amazon delivery guy and he
Right.
doesn't talk to me. So maybe we should just knock and leave a box, Amazon box with our stuff in it.
Door hanger or something like
Yeah.
that.
But anyway, so I started thinking about that and I was like, how do it make it like less approachable, less compared to the scammers? How do you differentiate yourself from no, this is a scam. You just want to sell my house. I don't want to sell my house. Do you know?
Hmm.
Okay, then if you're not going to sell your house, then don't sell your house.
Right.
I actually had one better than you. I started off in the dance industry
Okay.
as telemarketing to people for dance lessons
Yeah, that's
who had
tough.
not inquired.
Okay.
Literally, Arthur Murray, it's one of the world's largest dance
Yep.
franchises still today. It's been around for over 100 years. And they would call and say, it's a great day for dancing. Have you considered taking dance lessons?
Hmm.
And people would be like, what? Like,
Right.
like dance lessons for what? And I always thought that was the weirdest thing. At that time, I didn't care. Like, no was fine with me. I was like, oh, okay, well, I was just like bright-eyed. I was 18 years old,
Yeah.
like in the world. But now I'm like, I'll even be with friends or whatever, and like, oh no, I have a realtor. And I'm like, okay, like that's fine. You can work with that realtor. I still want to talk about it. I'm in this
Yeah.
industry because I like it. It's fun to talk about. Yeah, I come to this podcast to talk.
Yeah. Well, the conviction is there. That's the number one thing that I'm always interested in. And I actually, agents that I get close enough with when they're like not doing well and they're kind of, I always question people's conviction, because one thing that I identified in my career is my career, I always did well because I'm competitive and I'm a hard worker.
Yeah.
But I didn't really take it to the next level until I ultimately like convinced myself or whatever it was, or it just that this is what I'm doing. There is no like, all right, I'm going to do this for a little while.
There's no
And then
plan
if
B.
like something else presents itself, then
Mhm.
maybe I'll do that. And I think that a lot of people in every career, and I would say the vast majority, like I see it in real estate agents' eyes that like given an opportunity to leave real estate, they 100% would.
Mhm.
And the reason that I think that they feel that way isn't because they dislike real estate. It's because real estate isn't providing them what they thought they were going to get. And the reason that they're not achieving what they thought they were going to get is because they have it in the back of their mind, given the opportunity to do anything else, they would do it. And
Mhm.
so it's like this self-fulfilling prophecy,
Mhm.
right? Like I'm not getting what I want because I'm not putting in 100%, and I'm not putting in 100% because I'm not
Not
getting
getting
what
it.
I want.
Yeah.
And it's like, we can go
Yeah.
round and round. Like, I mean, relationships are like that. But,
Yeah.
um, and so going back to like me identifying that early on, I feel that to your point where you're like, well, I don't care what agent you're going to use.
Yeah.
I just want to talk real estate. Your conviction is there because one of my employees that I absolutely adored, she quickly left this lifestyle in adulthood. But as a child, she said, my ability to talk to people and have sales was that I used to door knock and just want to have basic conversations about your Lord Savior Jesus Christ.
Mhm.
Now you want to talk about a tough sell, right?
I will shock you. I did this.
Okay, so
I did this.
and there's nothing to sell. You just want to have a conversation.
Yeah.
And people are like, no. And you're like, no to what?
I know. I did this. So totally random story, but same time, left the house when I was 18, going off into the big world. Parents were like, go to college. And I was like, I have more for my life. I want to dance. So my dance family happened to be Jehovah's Witnesses.
Okay.
And I joined,
There you
whatever
go.
that means,
Yeah.
And yeah, we went door to door. And honestly, at the time, I was like, this is the weirdest thing. But it kind of set me up to feel like if you can go door to door and talk to people about something that is so off limits and so, it's just something that people feel uncomfortable talking about because it's something they've so established. Like maybe we're getting somewhere that's people have established this is my realtor. I know this person and I don't want them to not like me. And so they're my realtor.
Right.
And maybe they don't want to talk about
being
it.
like my realtor, even if someone said, I'm going to use this agent, you still want to have a conversation about real estate.
Yeah.
Because your conviction in real estate is strong.
Mm-hmm.
And
100%.
you have to have some serious conviction in
Yeah.
your Lord Savior Jesus Christ to go door knock.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that's kind of like
yeah.
my point. And then it is that it really comes down to that conviction. And,
Yeah.
gosh, the conviction that people have for,
Mhm.
a higher power is it's
And I'll do you another one too, is I will reach out to other agents
mhm,
and other brokerages and we're in the same industry. Like
right.
the way I look at it, it's like we can all learn and talk to each other. And I'll reach out to them when they have a listing and it's sitting for a while or whatever. And I know what it's like when you have a listing, it's not selling and the client doesn't want to go lower the price and there's all these things, but you're like
Yeah.
right on the edge of them being like, okay, I want to take it off the market. And so in my mind, I'm thinking, why don't you bring in another brokerage?
Yeah.
Why don't you bring in more agents
Sure.
to market this? If the client is so convicted that it's because of you, the agent, that
Mhm.
their house isn't selling, which I would think a lot of the time is probably not priced right, or it's there's other extenuating circumstances. But if they're on the brink of like my agent isn't doing enough, okay, keep that agent because there's a reason you hired them.
Yep.
Bring me on as well. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with a second
What do you
opinion?
have to lose?
I know. It's so crazy to me. So let's flip it again. I was talking to a client that had a HVAC problem. Came and got it inspected, said it like completely needs to be replaced. So naturally, this client is from an old school mindset. They said, well, let me get a second opinion. Got a second opinion, same part, the compressor, it's like old, the unit should just be replaced. And then they got quotes. Two of those quotes were kind of far off. Like we're talking double. So like 7,000 and 16,000.
Mm-hmm.
And then she had talked to, her friends and family, which we all do when we're making a big purchase. And they had said, well, which model is the HVAC and which model is the other HVAC? And it turned out that the more expensive company was selling like top of the line HVAC.
Sure.
So she then said, well, okay, let me go get another opinion, third opinion. Now we're talking about, under $15,000 investment in your home. HVAC, pretty important here in Austin.
Absolutely.
But three, and I think there was even a fourth that she called but didn't come out, people, just to get a quote on that. Yet when it comes to selling your house or finding your house, which we're talking is a couple $100,000 investment, we're not worried about getting other opinions or making sure that what this agent pitched and what this brokerage says they'll do is true, in fact, true. And it's so interesting to me because there's such exclusivity in real estate, which I think is important. We've talked about the loyalty conversation.
Yeah.
I think once you've decided to install your HVAC, you don't call the other company back to watch the guy installing your HVAC from the other company and say, could you watch him and make sure this is installed properly? You don't need multiple people once you've made your decision to go with one company.
Right.
But when it comes to real estate, when you're like okay, we're going to list soon, talk to everybody.
Sure.
Talk to multiple brokerages.
I totally agree.
Figure out even another one that I was thinking about the other day is a lot of agents, which totally makes sense, sell their own houses or do their own house. But every time I've dealt with a deal that like an agent was selling their house, it's always been more difficult.
Well, yeah, there's their emotions.
I know. And I'm always like, even then,
Mm-hmm.
maybe you're not going to pay them or maybe there's some deal
Right.
you work out. But like even then, wouldn't you want another opinion? I mean, we're talking big money you're going to make a difference, not even just based on experience like we've talked before.
Yeah.
But big money in just the commissions. That is the big topic right now of different commissions that you can negotiate differently, different ways of marketing. Some companies will do a full-fledged website for you. Others don't even have the tech to support that kind of. It's just interesting to me that people that are looking to find an agent to show them their houses or list with them, they don't really do enough research. They'll just do internet research, which in this industry, online research is going to show you everything shiny. And it's not going to give you the clarity that just talking to a person will give you.
So I'm just playing devil's advocate.
Yeah, I
haven't
love
thought
that.
I haven't thought this out. So
The devil's in the room, everybody.
do you think it's possible? Because at the end of the day, and God, this would like totally play to the NAR lawsuit in such a bad light. But do you
Let's
think
bring it on.
do you think it's because at the end of the day, sellers are kind of like, no one is going to sell, like the price is. I'll use the analogy that you'd given about the HVAC, where you had one that was here, and you get these multiple quotes, and the spreads are different. Where traditionally, I think the average consumer believes that regardless of who I choose, the amount I'm going to pay is going to be the same.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm going to make the same payment for a listing agent, I would prefer to go with somebody that I know and I could trust.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like regardless of maybe their experience level or anything along those lines. And so this might ultimately open up opportunity because, I mean, I'll be the first to say this, and the real estate community is going to hate me. But one thing that one thing that y'all have done really, really well is that we in lending have done a terrible job with is, you guys stand pretty strongly on your commissions and like what it's going to cost, right?
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mean that they're not negotiable. But hypothetically, if I contact 5 real estate agents to list my house and every single one of them stands like strong on the fact that they want 6% commission,
Mm-hmm.
I have no choice but to go with whoever I feel is the most experienced and who I like the most.
Yeah.
There is no cost difference.
I totally agree with that. But why in the equation or the scenario you just talked about, you had talked to multiple people. I wonder how many people actually talk to multiple people.
Well, and again, I think the reason I'm saying I don't think many have is because relating it to something like a HVAC.
Oh, they've already gone through the thought that
they're like,
I already know it's the same price, so I'm going to go with and help my friend, or I'm going to go and this person I trust.
Correct.
You know.
And so it kind of makes me wonder, and I do know successful agents, not down here, but up in Ohio, that,
Mm-hmm.
one of the things that we see a lot in Ohio that I don't see very often down here, and we'll probably see it more now, is a lot of these agents would do things like, I'm going to sell your home. It's going to be 6% commission on like the first 250,000. And then
Mm-hmm.
it's like here to here to here. And they give these options, right?
Yeah.
And I definitely would see way more negotiating with commissions on the listing side than I've seen down here. And I think it would be interesting to see more of that, because if it becomes more of a known that commissions are negotiable, I
Mm-hmm.
think you're going to see a lot less of, people only like going with the real estate agent that they know. I think it will be more common. Um, I'll even flip it on the buy side. I know a
Mm-hmm.
very good agent down here that I won't name, but got a lot of respect for him. He gives I want to say it's a $1,500 closing credit to every single one of his buyers towards their closing costs and prepaids.
Mm-hmm.
And he does that because he knows that if any other agents are involved, or furthermore, like, if any shopping takes place with the buy side, like most agents aren't even thinking about that. And oh, gasp, like I would never discount my commissions, right?
Yeah.
So for $1,500, I mean, when your average purchase price in Austin is, $500,000,
Mm-hmm.
what are you really
You're not
giving up?
losing. Yeah.
So I think giving more options in regards to cost like that is going to create more shopping.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Buckle in. I mean, because we as lenders have been dealing with that forever,
Yeah.
and the trades have been dealing with that probably since the beginning of time.
Mm-hmm.
And I give kudos to the industry itself. You guys have done a really good job of like sticking to your guns and
Yeah.
being like, this is what we make.
It's interesting. I think you can flip that story either which way, because I think you can say we've done a really good job, or we've kind of, why there was the lawsuit,
Sure.
have forced people into having no choice
Yeah.
just through lack of knowledge, or just through, well, what are you going to do, sell the house on your own?
Mm-hmm.
So I think you do get backed up against the wall. And it's always a fear that if you do go with the lesser person, this is a big purchase. Like, are you now going to get full service from them? So I think there is a fear of not investing fully, which is probably why agents stay so convicted by it. But, and I do think that people are starting to see that agents are different. You are going to
Oh,
get
yeah.
different service. You're going to get different resources. You're going to get different exposure of your property working with different brokerages and different sales agents. You're going to have a different experience.
Well, this is my biggest fear for your industry. We talked about this on the podcast about the $9.99 ribeye, and this is my biggest fear. And because we see this in lending a lot, and this is something that I've been trying to combat over like the last 3 to 5 years that I've been having a difficult time with. I find it very interesting when people. So the analogy of the $9.99 ribeye was, I eat a lot of red meat, okay, and I enjoy a good steakhouse, right? But I'm never going to like. We've got that diner, Jim's.
Yeah,
Jim's.
I love gyms. Yeah.
Right. I mean, would you?
It's just a diner, but yeah.
Right. So, if you were to order like Jim's, let's say it's Saturday, and Jim's has a special for a $9.99 ribeye, and the waitress smells like cigarettes, and she comes over and she's like, "What do you want?" And you're like,
Yeah.
"Oh, I'll take this $9.99 ribeye." She's like, "How do you want it cooked?" And you're like, "I want it rare." She's like, "All right." It comes back. It's like paper thin.
Yeah.
It's cooked well. You're like, this isn't what I ordered,
Yeah.
right? Who is responsible for this situation? Is it you because you ordered a $9.99 ribeye at Jim's? Like, what did you expect?
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, Jim's is amazing. This is just
No, but it's a perfect analogy. Because
or is it Jim's fault because they shouldn't have it on the menu because you know that it's not going to like meet the standard of somebody who's typically gonna like order a rare ribeye?
100% the consumer. And I think people would expect that to come from somebody on the service side. But why I feel that way is because think of how impossible it would be, even as a restaurant owner or anybody in a relationship, to assume all of the variables that somebody may or may not think of what a ribeye is or what service should look like. So I think as consumers, we're obligated to put things into perspective. You walk into a restaurant, if it's a certain ambiance, certain thing, you do elevate your expectation of what am I expecting the food to be like?
Right.
Even just looking at their website or, what their interiors look like, how they set a reservation or didn't, or all of the experience, I think sums up, oh, this is going to be good food. Doesn't mean it's
But
going to
here's the
be.
point to the real estate game, and this is what I've identified in my business because
Mhm.
again, my business is much more like, we got to look at loan estimates. Well, we do it for this, do it for that. It's like turning into used car sales from time to time.
Mhm.
And I get that phone call on a semi-regular basis from the client that moves forward with another lender, and then they're not happy, and they're like, "Oh, this isn't what I thought it was going to be." The point I'm trying to make is that the consumer. This is why dollar stores exist. This is why places like, I mean, even gyms, for example, exist. I find it interesting that the consumer will sometimes always gravitate toward the lower price, and then when not satisfied with the outcome, blames the restaurant or like if I go to Dollar General, I'm very handy, right?
Mhm.
I would never go and buy like a $50 circular saw
From
from
yeah, a
from
discount store.
Dollar General, and then if it broke after like 2 or 3 uses, be like, "Oh, this is ridiculous."
Yeah.
Like,
You'd
and
be like,
and
well, I got what
but
I
that's
paid
what
for.
the average consumer does, and that's what I'm concerned about in your industry is that people are going to gravitate toward the lower cost, and
Mhm.
instead of taking the responsibility of, well, I went with the cheapest, and cheapest isn't usually the best, it comes back to, well, why are they even offering this sort of service if
Mhm.
it's not, of course, it's not going to be, I think the average consumer knows it's not going to be top notch,
Mhm.
but I think there's going to be a lot of blowback with, the discount agent that's willing to do something for pennies on the dollar, and then I don't know what that looks like, but I'm fearful of it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because I haven't thought too much about this because we had talked about this before. Coming from apartments, it's a very transparent industry. The apartment complexes are paying agents. They're very
Sure.
transparent about what they're paying agents. So it's not this representative side. There's different issues in apartment locating because I think people think the apartment locator is working for them, but since they're being largely representing the property and being paid by the property, they're not really.
Right.
And we don't sign any representation agreements with our clients when you're doing apartment locating. So you're not really representing them. You're just bringing them to a property.
Yeah.
And then you do none of the paperwork.
Right.
So you're really just a referral
Yep.
agent at that point, which I think is still a great service. Shout out to the apartment locators out there because it's a hard market to navigate here. However, I don't think it's the consumers aren't coming back and getting upset with their locators who aren't charging them anything.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're getting more upset when they pay an agent full price and they're not getting what they wanted because they knew
Well,
they
sure. If
paid
you
for
pay
it.
nothing, then yeah, that's my
Yeah.
favorite line is, well, considering what I'm being paid, I think I've done a phenomenal job.
Yeah, and you are
Right.
getting paid, but you're not getting paid by them. So the person
Right.
that doesn't put out a card, you know, is interesting. This totally is a random thought, kind of segue off of this because I was wondering this for you. I think there's a difference between coming out of pocket to pay and how a lot of the purchasing in a real estate deal happens at the closing.
Mm-hmm.
Even the title companies will write like, oh, and you're not coming to table with this. It's just going to come out of the purchase and da,
Right.
da, da, da. Like all
Proceeds
the
and
numbers
sales.
just come out.
Yeah.
I think it's easier for people to accept a higher percentage because they're not coming out. Because almost every deal I've done, they'll scroll down the line item of the closing disclosure and they'll kind of be like, wait a minute, that's what you're getting paid? Because it's all there.
Sure.
And I'm like, yeah, like when you signed the agreement, it wasn't clear that like,
Right.
I'm sure you experience this all the time.
Oh
Or a
yeah.
lot of times clients are like, when I pick up a dinner or at lunch or whatever, they're like, oh, no, I got this, please, no, please. Because they're not actively paying you in their minds,
That's interesting. Yeah.
Like I get more guilty when the Starbucks person rolls the thing around for a tip. I'm like, yes, 20%. Oh God, I did it again.
You're right.
Then a client, they almost feel like they're indebted to you. And I'm like, no, we're getting paid,
Yeah.
and you're paying me
Sure.
from the value of the property that you're selling or the listing agents, in most cases right now are paying me on the purchase. So that's very interesting.
Well, and again, I watch it in my industry quite a bit, and the real estate industry has done a phenomenal job of combating it, but I see it coming, and I'm wondering how y'all are going to handle it because,
Mm-hmm.
when interest rates started to go up, I mean, one of the things that we always talk about in any business is margin compression, right? And it's like, how little will you close a deal for? And there are companies right now, mortgage companies that I won't name, that are currently out of business because
Because they were doing it a lot.
well, yeah, the business model was, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to fight for market share. We're going to close loans for basically nothing, and we're going to stay alive. And the other companies that, aren't going to get the deal because we're going to beat them in cost, even though we're not making any money. And then what ends up happening in that situation is the company that's like standing their ground, if you will, and saying, no, this is what we charge, this is what we're worth. They're not getting the business because the other company over here is doing it for less, possibly even zero, with
Mm-hmm.
the idea that they're going to put this company out of business. Meanwhile, they're hemorrhaging cash over here because they're doing
Mm-hmm.
deals for nothing, which ultimately could put both of them out of business. And it's really just like, I mean, I get, me, I get vulgar, but it's like two companies just like kicking each other in the dick.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like,
Yeah.
this isn't helping anybody. And
Yeah.
meanwhile, the consumer's like, this is great, I'll get the best deal, which is arguably true. But, hypothetically, you're not going to get the service. And in the long run, I wonder how that hurts the industry. And I'm just curious to see how it's going to play out. I mean,
Yeah.
we'll see.
Yeah, I think it's gonna come down to the same amount of agents producing, and the top percent of agents are gonna continue charging exactly what they've always charged, and they're gonna continue providing the service. They're gonna continue to get their word of mouth referrals, and they're gonna continue to be top of their game. And they're going to, much like we've talked before, rule out anybody that's not willing to meet that condition, because there comes a place where your business becomes of such value that you're not hungry for new business if they're not paying your price, right?
Mhm.
I've always worked for the most expensive franchises in the world when it came to dancing, and never did people bat an eye at it, because I think sometimes people like to pay
Yeah.
the high price. You're
That's why
holding
Mercedes
yourself to-
exists.
yeah, and it's why top restaurants exist.
Mhm.
I'm sure they could come down on margin if they wanted to, but they don't have to, because we get this wonderful experience. And
Mhm.
I almost feel like if I ever get provided with a service, whether it's like a haircut or going to a restaurant, and I feel like the bill came back and it was low, I always tip high.
Yeah.
Like higher. I won't be like, oh, 20%. I'll tip like 30%. Like, God, this is phenomenal, because you just get this emotional feeling, and you're like,
I haven't gotten my hair cut since I was 16 years old.
I'm sorry to bring it up. Well, when you're cutting your hair, you should give yourself a tip,
Yeah,
and
I
just put it
should.
in a jar.
Should. I shaved my head this morning.
Yeah, put $5 in the jar.
Yeah.
So it is interesting. I don't think anything's going to change with the agents that are really producing.
Mhm.
I think there's going to be a subsection of agents who are going to do 1 or 2 transactions a year, who are going to negotiate it down to 1%, and some of these likely investors or people that are really down and out in their situation, that bought too high and lost their job and whatever, are going to hunt down those agents that are giving discount service, and their house is going to sell, and they're going to move on with life. But I don't think it's going to shift the industry. That's my hope.
Well, I've got some bad news for you. If it's anything like what we saw,
Uh-oh.
yeah. Here's what ended up happening, and I was talking about this just last week, with my partner in the kitchen.
Mhm.
What ended up happening in our industry was, I think one of the flexes about real estate, and really what created this, was one of the flexes that we had in the mortgage industry, where like, this isn't the case any longer, but it was like almost better than the money that was made to be able to say, like, I work a 20-hour work week and I make a really good income.
Mhm.
And since things have tightened up, it's very difficult to make a really good income in real estate and work a 20-hour work week.
Mhm.
But you could do that like a few years ago. And this business
Yeah.
will always ebb and flow, and those opportunities come and go.
Yeah.
But as a broad stroke, that's just not the case. And so what ended up happening in our industry was all of the agents, and I'll just use round numbers, right?
Mhm.
Like, because this was back in like 2008, 2009 when they enacted Dodd-Frank. And at the time, if you could make like $100,000 a year, that was like really good money. I mean, we're
Mhm.
talking, what, 20 years ago?
Yeah.
So like 100,000 is like, I make $100,000 a year. Well, I knew guys that were making like $100,000 a year and literally working like a 20-hour work week, and then
Mhm.
doing bottle service and going out and picking up their kids and just living like a really good quality lifestyle.
Yeah.
And then I knew guys that were in that exact same market that were working a 40-hour work week, and they were making like 250. Well, when things tightened up, because of the way that we had to get paid in terms of our commissions,
Mhm.
all that ended up happening was the people who were closing enough to make $100,000 a year were now only able to make like 40 or 50. And they were ultimately unwilling to put in the additional work that it took to get them back up to where they needed to be.
Mm-hmm.
And so they exited the business with the intention of like, oh, I'm not doubling my production to make the same amount of money that I was making before. Like, this is a waste of my time.
Mm-hmm.
And the people who were making like 250 were now making like 125. They were just stealing the market share. And that, coupled with technology, which is the big argument with, this lawsuit, is that people are going on places like Zillow. They don't, you're not like printing out magazines like it used to be, where you would legitimately look at magazines to figure out what homes were for sale.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing was in real time. So like you could call an agent who had an office line. With technology now, as a real estate agent, if I were to, for lack of a better term, like feed a real estate agent nothing but clients that were ready to just work with them, there was
Mm-hmm.
no selling involved, you could physically run, if I had to guess, you could probably physically do 5 to 7 listings a month and probably run 7 to 10 buyers a month. And I know there's people out there that are like, that's so fucking exhausting.
Mm-hmm.
But with technology and all of those things, if things go the way that I think they may go,
Mm-hmm.
all of these part-time agents aren't going to be able to make any money because their commissions are going to be cut in
It's gonna
half.
drop down, yeah.
Right. So it becomes the law of diminishing returns. I mean, any business owner will understand this. Like, you could be a boutique shop and, I kind of like what you said, because there is a little bit of truth to the fact that, like, yeah, we'll go back to the ribeye. Like, a ribeye market price is like $16 a pound. I know that as a fact, right?
Mm-hmm.
That is the material cost that is associated with a ribeye. Now, I can go to one of my favorite steakhouses downtown, which is Dean's,
Mm-hmm.
and if I get that ribeye that costs them $16 a pound, I know for a fact that a 1 pound bone-in ribeye at Dean's is going to be at $150. It's like a 10 times markup. And some would argue like, oh, I can cook a really good steak at my house.
Mm-hmm.
I'm one of those people, but
Yeah.
I'm going out, I'm getting an experience, so on and
Mm-hmm.
so forth. But then there's places like Texas Roadhouse who are just killing it, right? They probably sell 10 times the beef that Dean's does. But when
Mm-hmm.
you look at it pound for pound, it's like, who makes more money, right?
Mm-hmm.
In a night. I'll tell you right now, I'm going to guarantee it's Texas Roadhouse.
Mm-hmm.
But they're making like probably a 10% profitability more than Dean's. Dean's is taking in probably half the clients, half the bullshit, half the credit card processing, half the
Mm-hmm.
cleanup, half the staff, and they're making 10% less. And so if you look at it in numbers, it's like, well, who would you rather be? You could argue, if you're this type of person, I'd rather be the person making the most amount of money, because 10% every single night over 365 days a year.
Mm-hmm.
I could look it up right now and say, like, what's a Texas Roadhouse make? They probably ring in billings of probably 30, 40,000 a night.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you do the math on that. I mean, they're making it's $1 million store, just one.
Yeah.
And that's the law of diminishing returns. And I see that coming for real estate. And if you want to be that boutique, if you want to be Dean's, like, you're never going to get that Texas Roadhouse money,
Mm-hmm.
but you could still do really, really well. And I see there becoming a great divide between those two types of real estate agents,
Mm-hmm.
because the one that's not going to make it is the one that cannot produce an experience, not even through like their own experience in the industry. I mean, like, creating an experience, charisma,
Yeah.
the time that it takes,
Mm-hmm.
all of those things, the relationships that are created. I think those agents are going to be few and far between, like being
Yeah.
that like concierge agent.
Yeah.
And I think the majority of the business is going to be forced to go to, that middle of the road. Like, I have the experience, I'm good at my job, but at the same time, you're not going to have to compete with, a bunch of other people, and technology is going to help us take care of it. And
Mm-hmm.
you're going to close twice as many transactions for the same amount of money. But then, when we get those big bumps,
Yeah.
you better call your
live in
friends
the
and family
luxury.
and tell them that you can't talk for like a year.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly. That's an interesting comparison, because I think it is very relatable. I'm hoping you're wrong.
I mean, right?
Well, actually, I don't even need to hope you're wrong, because I think that it would probably make those great agents happier when the saturation's a little bit gone.
Yeah.
Because there is a little bit of this, like, there's a lot of people in real estate, and we know that the majority aren't doing real estate.
Right.
So if that number went down and then the amount of people that are actually producing, I think that would be a great thing for the industry.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll have to see what happens and look back on this. This is why these are great conversations to record. Because
Some of them age well, some of them don't.
yeah, people look at us and be like, "What?"
But I related back to the HVAC thing, and it's something I honestly haven't thought about until this podcast right now. And that is that I think that the reason why those like onesie twosie agents stick around is because they get business from a friend or family member that is going to utilize them, because that friend or family member feels like I'm going to pay the same dollar figure no matter who I use. And therefore, if the cost is the same, then I have to go with someone that I know and I like.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a strong possibility that making things known that, like, hey, because the one thing I've seen is agents push their value, right? Like, well, I'm better than them, right? Like, okay, yeah, that agent over there, they're not going to do what I can do for you. But in a fixed cost situation, I think that's an uphill battle, right? When you know the cost is fixed, so we always talk about it. It's like, what are the three things in any purchase that you make that you care about? You care about the price, you care about the quality, and you care about, like, how quickly can I get it? Well, if the price is fixed and the timeline is fixed,
Yeah.
then really all it is price. And I'm not saying like coming down on price is what you should do.
Yeah.
But I think focusing on price is not a bad play. You know, one of the things that I can't wait, I'm about to, like, you're going to fucking, your eyes are going to just roll. So a lot of times, and you said this to me before we even started on the podcast.
I told you not to record.
Well, hang on. It was a lot of clients call me and they're like, yeah. And I'm just going to use your name. Like, hey, I got your information from Tristan Reiman. He gave me a list of lenders that he really likes to use. So I'm just giving you a quick phone call because I want to make sure I get the very best deal. Right. And when those words are said to me, like, it's like on a loop in my brain and nobody bats an eye. And I started thinking about it and I was like, you know, one thing I've identified being like a purchase agent and having relationships with real estate agents is that real estate agents are not created equal. And so when I have a client that is working with an agent that I don't have a relationship with and that I don't know and clearly doesn't seem to be interested in creating a relationship with me, what is stopping me from saying to the buyer, hey, listen, I have a list of a couple of agents that I really like to utilize. You should probably call Tristan. He's one of them, or call so-and-so. There's another one, because they might be able to do the deal for less. Because that's what y'all do to me, right?
Yeah. And you know what? It's so funny that you say that, because my brain always goes to creativity. We've talked about this before. I think it's because I come from a background of creative. I'm an artist. That I'm always like, the next best idea, like the next Uber or the next idea that is going to revolutionize real estate. Everybody's thinking it's going to be like these tech companies that are doing it all for you. You don't need real estate agents. I don't want to succumb to that. I believe that we need people to do these transactions. It's a relationship industry. However, I think that you're absolutely right, that I've almost questioned doing that myself, that when I get a listing appointment, say, and why don't you contact these two other agents, because I want to make sure you get the best service. Because I'm confident that I will give you the greatest service, but if I can't for some reason, I would want you to work with the other person. And the thing about being in real estate is we all do kind of help each other. I don't know if it's the same as lending where you guys are kind of directly competing, but I think real estate agents do have this obligation, whether we do it or not, to respect each other and not go after each other's clients and that sort of thing.
Sure.
But if we're still in the ring, and there is no better way to get an agent to work better for you than telling them that you're interviewing two other people.
Well, yeah, it's competition. Competition is great.
100%. And if your best friend is afraid of that, I would question using them as your agent right then and there. If they're saying like, no, absolutely not. Don't reach out to anybody else. We're friends. Right then, there's already this emotional response that is showing them that their fiduciary is not with you. It's with themselves.
Sure.
Which is a hard thing to come down. Like, I mean, a lot of us, I think, are looking for ourselves. We're thinking about our own bills. We're thinking about our families. We're thinking about this is our livelihood. We work on 100% commission. But ultimately, and I feel this almost to a fault, ultimately, I don't want to see a client who invested tons of money, energy, effort into their home get less than what it's worth because they went with the wrong agent.
Sure.
Just because they didn't want to have conversations with anybody else, or it was just easier to not upset the boat and da da da. It's not worth losing money, friendships, and all this just from having some simple conversations. Like you said, you're not signing in blood with all these people.
Right.
You're picking who's best for you. And I'm telling you, anybody that's truly your friend or family member or a really good agent will say, congrats, good luck with the sale of your house. Let me know if there's anybody else that can help with you. I'm glad I got a chance to learn from this experience and, go work with that agent. I try to put that out there. Now, some people would argue that you're selling yourself short. You're going to lose deals because you're not like a bulldog and you're not going for the business. And then people are going to look at you as weak and they're not going to go with you.
That's exactly what I wanted to touch on because, I think that the biggest fear that agents have with this whole situation is that it's been on the buy side, especially like, you just told me you have clients that are going down the closing sheet at the very end and they're like, that's what you were paid. They have no idea. And that's a lot of agents' fear is that now, the sheet is going to come off and it's going to be like, okay, now you're going to like see what everybody's receiving as far as pay is concerned. And going back to your analogy with this woman with the HVAC, I truly believe that that is why, and this is like, I've never had this thought until we sat down, but I think that is why people go with agents and don't shop around because they just figure like, well, if the cost is all the same. And so what I'm getting at is as an agent now, I'm almost wondering if it makes sense to just, instead of run from it, like, oh no, now we have to like run to it and basically say like, hey, I'm going to be your buyer's rep. I'm going to pitch value, experience, so on and so forth. And I want to make sure that I'm the least expensive, right? Like I want you to get value. Like, of course, I'm not going to work for free. Here's what we typically are paid, right? But like in the event that you are getting in contact with other buyers reps or anything along those lines, if somebody is willing to do it for less, let me know. And I think running to that and having that conversation, I truly think that you're probably going to have a higher opportunity of them not like going with anyone else because I can see a lot of agents, especially since it hasn't been commonplace to do this, where like if there's another agent, it's like, oh, you should work with me. It's like, no, I'm working with someone else. Buyers are going to now be like, well, what are you going to charge me on the buy side? It's like, are you prepared to answer that question on the fly? Average real estate agent. I'm asking you right now. You're at a cocktail party. Somebody says, like, what are you going to do when the general public is like, what are you going to charge me on the buy side? And this goes back to my big fear is that I think that eventually it will work itself out. But I think that there's a strong possibility in the beginning that your industry starts dropping their pants on the buy side and agents are doing things for pennies on the dollar just to get a deal done. And that's what I'm worried about.
I think that's
and there
happened.
has to be like a middle ground.
I think that's happened for a long time, to be honest with
on
you.
The buy side?
Not on the buy side.
I mean, definitely on the listing side.
Yeah, definitely on the listing side. Yeah. On the buy side, no, because I think it's just been an expectation that's going to be handled by the listing side.
Right.
Yeah.
And so this is my point. This is why, to your like, why are people not talking to multiple agents? That's why. That's why. Because they're like, well, if the cost is fixed, I'm going to go with the person I know. And then while you're watching somebody that you know work with someone that they know, and you know that that agent isn't going to provide the service that you are going to provide, even if you pitch value in terms of like, I'm going to give you better service, they're like, that's great, but like, this is my little sister. It's like, your little sister just got her real estate license. You understand that, right?
And she also just took a lot of money from you.
Right, but in the consumer's mind, it's like, if someone's going to get my money, it might as well be the person I know. Where
which I think I would agree to that.
Well, logic. I think if it's vocalized a little more and it's like, look, we're going to be able to do this and give you a better service at a lower price. I don't know. I'm kind of doing this on the fly, and I'm sure I'm going to catch a lot of heat for it. But I think it could create better experiences for buyers and, more importantly, more closed transactions for the real estate agents that, for lack, I hate to use this word, but deserve it. Right? Because I do hate the idea of your industry. I have to deal with so many agents that just muddy the waters that, close I mean, it is kind of crazy that you can like close, 3 or 4 transactions, and if you live in like a nice gated community and, you're like a soccer mom and just know the right people, you could close like 4 transactions and really make a good living.
Mm-hmm.
And
For
I
sure.
just, I mean, it is what it is, but I think it just, I think it screws, I think it muddies the waters, and I think it also hurts the people who are taking this job way more seriously and have going
Yeah.
back. We'll bring it all full circle. The conviction,
The conviction. Yeah.
right?
I totally agree with you.
We don't want bad Christians in our
Yeah. We don't want those guys.
right. If you're gonna do it, you gotta
Maybe
follow
you
the
know
good
what?
book.
I think you gave me an idea. I think I'm gonna every time person comes to the door, I'm gonna give them one of my flyers, a
There you go.
handful, and I'm gonna say, if you, I will work with you guys if
Ooh,
you hand
bartering.
these out with your flyer.
It's not a bad idea. Here's the only thing I will tell you is that I've learned you cannot put things in mailboxes. I know that.
Yeah, it's definitely. My dad used to work for the post office, so
Okay.
yeah, I'm very, very keen on that. Yeah,
But you could do door
I
hangers.
do door hangers. Yeah, I already do. And it's honestly, this is the funniest thing. Again, I think most agents do it because statistically, if you do this, you'll get this many leads, the funnel. And in my mind, I do it because I'm like hoping I get to talk to somebody about real estate.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. I want to go into their house. I want to see it. I want to assess the value.
Mhm.
And this is what I really loved about the apartment side, because apartments are always open. There's always
Yeah.
apartment complexes that are
Those are
available.
vacant, yeah.
So I would tour communities all over. So I educated myself with what's on the market, what the market looks like.
Mhm.
And agents can do that now with listed properties, but they aren't getting the full picture because how many properties are listed in a neighborhood, right?
Yeah.
But if I could go in and talk with people in the neighborhood, I truly would know your neighborhood. And if nothing else, you have better talking points than, oh, my brother's a realtor. You would know a little bit more about the value of your home. You'd know a little bit more about local agents that could help you. And guess what? Use your brother. That is fine with me. But I got a little bit of knowledge. You got a little bit of knowledge. And I think that is what the world needs, to be honest with you.
Well, what else are they going to do? Watch Netflix?
Yeah. Or their
'Cause if
phone,
you-
scroll their phone.
Right.
I mean, we
Doom
all do
scroll.
it.
Yeah.
Or, this is interesting too. I think it comes because I was thinking about all these different concepts of why people avoid solicitation. But have you noticed that at Target, there's like one register open now, but there's still like 15 rows of registers? And then there's self checkout with like a line that's like miles long.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it just comes down to we don't want to interact with people, or we've lost this want to have to interact with people for fear that we might disappoint them, or we're not going to agree with their views, or we don't want to have to say no to them because that hurt. Like there's all this emotional stuff around it, I think. And that was another one of my theories of like, why do we not want to talk to real estate agents? Why are we so like, no, my mom is a realtor.
Well,
It's-
I have an answer to that. I know what part of it is. I mean, we talked about the insecurity part, but the other part is, so here's one of the things, and I've talked about this quite a bit on the podcast that I find super interesting. Have you ever had, and like I went and saw Joe Coy. He did a joke on it about Asian people,
Mhm.
and there's something about, and I don't know if it's like a worldly culture thing, but there's some, like my favorite thing is when someone will have like a new pair of shoes or like something along those lines, and I'll compliment someone like, "Oh my gosh, that's a really nice sport coat," right? And they'll do things like, "Oh yeah, it's Gucci," and you're like, "Oh, that's amazing." Like, guess how much I got it for? I'm like, I don't give a shit,
Yeah.
right?
I
It's
just
nice,
liked the
you like
coat.
it,
I didn't
right?
care about the brand or the price.
But there's some sort of like flex for purchasing things at what is considered to be under market value.
Mm-hmm.
So what that means is that if there's a flex to that, then what's the opposite of that? Overpaying or being sold, right? So there is something about our society that points the finger in a bad light that you're stupid if you purchase something and don't get a deal.
Mm-hmm.
So if someone is coming to your house and wanting to talk to you about a service that you didn't ask for,
Mm-hmm.
if you end up doing business with them, you're an idiot.
Yeah, because you just got sold.
You just got sold, you dipshit. Like, and I don't understand it, because then because here's the flip side of it. If that what I just said was like ironclad, then no one would drive Mercedes, no one would go to like high-end restaurants, no one would wear designer clothes. So what is it that people are like, I don't want to be sold, but then there's also a flex for like wearing a Gucci belt. Like that Gucci belt is going to hold your pants up just as good as like the Marshall's
Mm-hmm.
belt. And it's made out of the same shit. And a lot of that stuff's even fake, but that's not even the point.
Yeah, it's
So
a
like,
sense that you're doing well. You know, it's funny because I think that agents are becoming a brand. It's like almost a necessity at this point, where if I do get a conversation with a person to say like, oh, I'm a realtor, blah blah. The first thing is like, oh, do you know so and so?
mm,
And I'm like,
yeah,
no, I don't know them. And they're like, oh, well, they do a lot of business in Austin.
mm,
And it's almost like the
I get
same
that.
idea
Do you
of
know so and
like,
so? Like,
yeah,
no.
yeah, no, I don't know
And then
them.
I pull
Oh,
their
well,
production, and
they're
they don't do
really
a lot of business.
well. That's what I'm saying. It's this concept of like you want to be affiliated with this celebrity who's doing a lot of business because like they were willing to work with me.
Mm,
Do you know? It's so interesting though because I think if we all step back, and I'm a brand person, I do believe in the brands, and a lot of times it's not just a brand. They do have better quality and things like that. There's a reason you're paying for those brands.
sure.
But a lot of it is just the face value. The movie House of Gucci did that. They
Yeah.
said that this is people buy our products
Poor people.
because they want to
Poor
feel
people.
rich.
That's what
they
they
want to
said.
look rich.
Yeah. They're like, rich
And
people don't buy our products.
I think that's completely human nature. It's completely normal. You know what we need on this? We need like a psychologist or something to come on with us, or like a therapist or something.
I have a child psychologist that is a dear friend of mine that is flying in today. Her name is Jessica Becca, and I have to pick her up from the airport.
That's
and
it. I need to come back tomorrow. Is what you're saying?
she'll be here.
We need an adult psychologist.
Yeah,
actually,
she's-
maybe.
I mean, she is qualified to give.
Because a lot of this is
advice.
human nature, but it's so shocking to me that we, with human nature,
Mhm.
will make a poor financial decision.
Well, because they say that people don't purchase based on true logic; it's based on emotion.
100%. We know that.
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately, you follow through with logic. So, your sister's an agent, you give her a chance to talk to her. But logic does play into it. It's not emotional the whole ride.
well, I think the reason why emotion plays more into it is because in real estate, especially, or in any purchase, no one has a crystal ball, and so it is impossible to say. This goes back to when I go to a loan closing. There's typically only two types of emotions that I get from the buyers. It's either, "Yep, we did it," and they're almost like they're not pissed, but they're not excited. And then there's people that are like, "Yeah, this is like no one is ever like this was genius. I've made the best decision." Nobody does it. No one.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I do my annual reviews where I follow up with all of my past clients, I call people, and especially people with, I'll even tell you, I remember right now we're seeing interest rates at about a 7%.
Mm-hmm.
I have people that I did annual reviews that we closed in early of 2022. So it's been 2 years ago that we got them interest rates at about 5.5 to 5.75%. And you would have thought that we were just like fucking them over, right? Like, you guys screwed me.
Yeah, now
And
it's
we're sitting at
7.5.
closing.
Yeah.
Now it's 7%. So when I'm like calling clients and I'm like, hey, doing your annual review, you have a 5.25%. I kid you not. The exact clients that are like, that were sitting at closing, like,
so
yeah,
mad. Yeah.
they're like, oh, really purchased at a good time, right? And they almost take credit for it. When I just think like, close it, I was like dragging you like a child to the closing table.
Mm-hmm.
And now you're beating your chest that you like bought at a good time. It's insane. So to the
Yeah.
emotional part, if we want to get logical about it, it's really not possible because no one really knows
what's going to happen. So it allows you to lean into the emotion, lean into what feels best.
Just go for it.
And ultimately, you're either going to be really upset or really happy once your next appraisal comes out.
And so you have to go emotionally. It's like, there is some logic. Like, obviously, don't buy things you can't afford, right? And don't buy things you don't like. But, like, is this a good decision? Well, I don't know yet.
Yeah, but I'll let you know in a couple years.
Right.
Yeah, and so long as this person answers my calls and is nice to me and I feel like I'm helping them, that's another big one, then we'll get something going here.
Yeah, so you have to lean into the emotion more than anything when making purchases because you don't know what the future will hold.
When it comes to real estate, that's for sure.
I mean, a logical purchase is like food, water.
I need to eat. Yeah.
Right. Like, those are logical purchases. Like, you're not thinking like, should I pay my water bill today? Like,
yeah, it's interesting. But the PSA today for me is reach out to more than one agent.
I agree.
That's a PSA because I was thinking about what you were saying about where the real estate market's going to go. And I think that if we look at multiple industries, that agency agreements are going to change in real estate. Meaning, why is real estate, and I don't even know this for sure, I'm just thinking about it on the fly, but why is real estate one of the only industries that still has exclusivity? You can't even advertise. We get solicitation from um, businesses that support real estate business all the time, and not one of them will do a commission deal. It's like, pay us, and we're going to put you in the best marketing platform. We're going to give you the best software. We're going to sell you leads, right? But they want the money up front. But why is it that I'm losing my train of thought.
Real estate has exclusivity.
Oh yeah, why do we have exclusivity? Because you are allowed to do it without exclusivity, and you could have 3 signs in your yard. And wouldn't that make more sense when you're selling something? We've talked about exclusivity from a loyalty standpoint, but you can be loyal to 3 businesses.
Sure.
And they work separately, and the first one to sell. I think the only issue is it becomes really sticky. You know, who gets the who gets paid. But if I'm a seller and I have three signs in my front yard and I agree for 1% on all of them, I'm still spending 3%, but I have now 3 brokerages and 3 agents, 3 different teams supporting me.
Well, I think it comes down to the line that we always talk about in real estate. Everything is negotiable. It always has been. Unfortunately, a bunch of rich attorneys convinced the public that, you know, they didn't know things were negotiable. I don't know. They always have been, though.
Yeah.
But yeah, going back to the main topic of solicitation, I don't know, man. What do you think your partner's reason is behind it? Because he doesn't work in a sales job, right?
Yeah, so I think that people are of the belief, well, he definitely is of the belief that I'm in control of my life. I'm calculated. I wake up at this time. I go to work. If I need something, I can seek it out. It's very easy at my fingertips on my phone. It's on the computer. I can get what I need, and I'll seek it out when I need it. I don't need you to come to me.
Right. Isn't it debatable, though, that like a lot of the things that he would maybe search for, he wouldn't know about if it wasn't for these companies doing the things that they're doing?
100%. I think marketing is a solicitation we all approach every single day. You can't drive down the road without seeing a billboard. You can't go to a bathroom without seeing a sign, an ad in front of you. You can't watch a movie, a Netflix, a Hulu, whatever, without ads and commercials. We're constantly being sold. But we don't have to have a conversation with a human, so we're okay with those sales.
Interesting.
Even though a conversation with a human might give you more life, just because interacting with humans is what we're supposed to do.
Well, eventually you're going to end up with a salesperson no matter what. Once you make a buying decision, I mean, there's no way around.
Well, a lot of people, I don't know if you're getting this in your industry, but a lot of people will message me, and I kind of have a rule against this. I don't know, maybe it's shooting me in the foot, but they'll message me and say, oh, can you just give me send me this, can you send me some more information about this? And I always say, well, I'd like to jump on a quick phone call. And if they don't respond to that, then I'm probably not a good fit for you, because I think that you really need to talk to a person and see where they're at. And that 3 to 5 minute phone call, maybe even 2-minute phone call, is so much more valuable than you sending me an email or a text. I don't know who you are when you say, I'm looking for a 3-bedroom and a 2-bath and da-da. I'm like, okay, here's your 30,000 options, I need to have a conversation.
Why not just reply with your NMLS link?
Exactly.
Or your MLS link.
Here's a few houses that I think might fit what you're looking for. And you know why I don't do that? It's back to the whole loyalty and branding thing. My brand is people first. I believe in customer service. I think it's a lost art in a lot of industries. I believe in people interaction. I think that the idea of robots serving you drinks and kiosks that self-checkout is all efficient and great. I think there's some value to technology, but I don't think it needs to replace our human interaction.
It won't. And again, going back to what we experienced in my business is like, I'm just concerned about the temporary backlash that's going to be associated with real estate. For the record, I do not think that like you guys are going to create a like race to the bottom where all of a sudden, everybody's working for free.
Yeah.
The invisible hand is a thing, right? But what I do think is that you're going to see some changes in regards to like the, quick story, like back in the day, when I first got into this business, closing 4 transactions a month was like you were a fucking loan god, right? 4 transactions was like amazing. And then flash forward to maybe like 5 or 6 years later, it was 6. And then I remember when I was like kind of really starting to do well, it was like 8. And right now it's like you're not like top tier unless you're closing like 10 to 12 transactions a month as an individual agent. And I know there's people out there that are going to be like, that's insane. That's bullshit. I close 4 transactions and I make good money. That's great. But like, if you look at the broad stroke of what other agents are doing, I'm under the impression that's what's going to end up happening for your business, where like I think a lot of agents and this isn't directed at you, but
Yeah.
like again, broad stroke, I think a lot of agents were happy if they could close like 2 to 3 million. It's definitely not like a luxurious lifestyle, but it will pay your bills.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't be surprised to see that like you cannot make it any longer in real estate closing 2 to 3 million, and that closing like 4 to 5 is going to become necessary in order to make the money that was associated with 2 to 3 million. And so people are like, well, how am I going to find that? Well, I'll tell you that $2 to $3 million agent is either going to get his shit together or he's going to get out. And therefore the business will be there. And if you're looking at it like, well, I don't really want to work more, my rebuttal to you would be, you weren't working in the first place. You just weren't. Like,
Yeah.
closing 2 to 3 million as a real estate agent, one of my favorite analogies is like, and I don't suggest anyone do this, but I think you would be shocked if you did. If you could convince a Starbucks to put up a folding table in front and literally just has a sign that says, I'm a real estate agent, ask me any question you want. If you sat outside of a Starbucks 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, I guarantee you could close $2 to $3 million in real estate just by doing that. And people just aren't, they're like, I don't have 8 hours or don't want to, like,
Yeah.
that's how easy it is to do those numbers. And the agent out there that's like, you're wrong, come to me. Come to me. I will coach you.
We
and
will sit at a Starbucks together.
I will prove to you that you could close 2 to 3 million in real estate in a year with your eyes closed. You are not working. You're just not.
Yeah.
You're not.
But I will say, just to clarify that, that couldn't just be any person doing that. I think
Yeah, because they're not working.
Yeah.
There's no real estate agent out there working 40 hours
would
right now,
lose it.
closing less than 2 to 3 million.
Exactly.
Like, I promise you, it's because you're not doing money-making activities.
Exactly.
Period. Like the
I-
one,
IPA.
Yeah, the one-
Income producing
right.
activities.
The caveat of closing real estate is doing real estate activities. Like you're not just going to sit there and wait for your, my favorite line. We had James McDonald in here last week, and he talked about people that are like, oh, I just sell to my sphere and friends and family. And the comment that he makes all the time that I love is he goes, well, it sounds like your business model is or what is it? I wish I had more moms.
Yeah, you're just selling to your family.
Yeah, I wish I had more moms.
It's so interesting because that's like this big of a pool, but
Right.
you're afraid of this pool.
Well,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, it comes full circle. And his whole thing is you need to get better. No matter what you're doing in sales, you need to get better at talking to strangers. And that is your, consumer, your consumer marketing to the consumer, door knocking, things like that. Because if you're only selling to people that that is a failing business model. Can you imagine a restaurant that opened up and said, hey, we are only serving clients that we know?
Hey, there are restaurants that do that, and they have like 3 booths full, and you're wondering how they stay open.
Yeah, I mean, what are they, just serving their friends and family, and that's it?
Yeah.
What happens when their friends and family
regulars.
die and stuff? That's not a sustainable business model. Is the bottom line.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
It's the difference between career and somebody who got into it. I mean, I know
Right.
people that got their real estate license because they just want to do their own transactions,
and there's
or they
there's-
just
that-
want to
yeah,
be
there's nothing
educated.
wrong with that.
Yeah. So yeah,
I
it's
actually
interesting.
was dealing with a guy who has his real estate license, hasn't sold a home in over 10 years, and is doing his own transaction, and it's a fucking nightmare because all he wants to do is call me and ask me what I think. And the truth is I'm kind of offended by it because I love my real estate agents, and I'm like, oh, I'm not a realtor. When I do know the answer, but it's like, I'm not a real estate agent. He's like, oh, it's just so much different from when I was an agent. It's like, duh. Like, what are you doing? And then he's calling the listing agent and being like, well, this part of the contract, can you explain this to me? And the listing agent's the same thing. Like, I'm not representing you.
Yeah.
Like, you're representing yourself. Good luck. And he's so frustrated and flustered. And I'm just like, I don't know what to tell you, dude.
I will tell you, though, to shout out to you because you've done a few transactions with me now. Well, we've done them together. And you always answer your texts. You always answer a call. It's been every hour of the night sometimes. And sometimes I'm not even expecting an immediate response. And I'll call you and you'll call you in 5 minutes. And you always call back. And I mean, a lot of people would say, yeah, well, of course, in this industry, agents answer their phone and lenders answer their phone. It's not true.
It's not.
And I challenge clients to reach out to other lenders because I know that if they reach out to you, they're going to get you. And what
Right.
I like about your process too, which is I think so Austin from moving from New York and Boston, it's a very Austin thing that it's easy.
Right.
It's not like, oh, here's a form, fill this out, and then we'll jump on a phone call. It's like you can text. You can
Yeah.
text real estate agents. You can text me whenever you want. You can text Matt when you want. And it's funny because I'll even tell clients, like, they'll ask me a mortgage question. And I'm just like, don't know, text
Mhm.
Matt. And they're like, well, I don't know. And I'm like, everybody around you right now is getting paid.
Right.
Reach out.
Well, we will. We hope to.
Yeah, reach out. And I don't know if they actually do reach out to you, but
They do.
it's so easy in this industry if you make it easy. You know, I'm a lender, reach out. You have a money question, great. And I've asked you questions that you're like, not really my department. Call this person
Sure.
or call this person. But you always give me a direction, which is, anyway, so I thank you a lot for that because I think it's
Well, I
the
appreciate
reason
you
we're
mentioning it.
closing deals. And so,
Well, and I try to walk that fine line between being kind of like the boutique concierge, all of that, but also trying to be affordable because this is like the hardest part of any business that I think real estate agents are going to really have to have like a come to Jesus moment about is where do you want to be? Because if you're going to hold your ground and say, I'm the best in the business and therefore I'm the most expensive, I'm here to tell you right now, you are not going to capitalize on all of the business and you better be happy with what you get. And that like experience, livelihood, whatever you want to call it, like that comes at a price to you, real estate agent, right? And then there's the other agent who's like, I'll close 15 transactions a month at 1% and I'll make way more money. And it's like, what are you giving up? And I try to walk that fine line where it's like, I'll say it on tape right now. I am not the least expensive lender. That is a fact. I have clients that call me and they'll say, you know what, Matt, I shut it down immediately. They're like, hey, I got your contact information. I'm contacting a ton of lenders. I just want the lowest rate and the lowest closing cost. And I'm like, okay, I'll give you the number. Right. And I just direct them to places like Better Mortgage and these online companies. Like they're going to be the least expensive. You're not even going to deal with a loan officer. You're going to deal with a processor. You'll never talk to them. They work from 9 to 5 and they're going to be the least expensive. Here's the number. And they're like, well, what would you do for me? That's literally where they go. And I'm like, I'm confused.
I learned this the hard way, by the way.
I am confused.
I learned this the hard way.
Why do you care?
I had a client use an out-of-state lender. And I had heard of this being a thing when I worked for a lender for a brief time, but I didn't think it was like actually a thing. Because like there's already so many lenders in our area that I thought like, why would you go out of the state? But this lender was promoting that they like specialize in low income or affordability or something like this. And so of course that attracts a lot of people.
Sure.
And they were nice enough, but the lack of knowledge they had and the lack of like how much follow-up I had to do, and this sounds like lazy realtor, so don't take it that way. But when you're the realtor and you're kind of holding things together, it really helps to have good people around you.
Of course.
Because if you're working together as a team, the deal goes effortlessly. And that's all sides of the deal. But when you're working with an out-of-state lender and he's kind of like, well, get me this, this, and this, and call the client, I'm like, wait a minute. When I work with Matt, I don't have to get this, this, and this. He has people that get this and this.
Because that lender's not being paid.
Focus on the other thing, right?
The lender's not being paid, and he doesn't give a shit about the relationship that he might be able to create with you.
Yeah.
And furthermore, if the process goes sideways, what are the repercussions? What, you're going to tarnish the image that he does not have in the local market?
In the local market, yeah, exactly.
You know, it's like he'll just block your phone.
Yeah, it's
done.
Like, doesn't care. Yeah, it's interesting. So I have dealt with that, and I know other agents that have told horror stories as well. But I'm totally open if a client does that. But I will always recommend they reach out to another one, just like what this whole conversation is about. If you're considering selling, or you're considering buying, or you've talked with a lender, just contact another agent. And I am more than happy to get in contact with you and discuss it with you. And I swear, you know this from knowing me, it's almost a fault. Which, to a fact where I probably leave some money on the table. But
but you sleep at night.
But I sleep at night because it's just the type of person I am. And I believe that if you have your sister or whatever, if they're capable and they can do it and they can deliver the product that you need, great. If not, let's work together. And they can learn from the experience, or I can learn from the experience. It's just so much more valuable for you. So I challenge people to reach out to another lender or reach out to another agent. Now, once you're in the deal, that's when that loyalty kicks in.
Sure.
Once you're in the deal, it complicates things to continue searching. Because I know people that do that with lending. They'll get their first pre-approval, they'll get into the house, and then they'll keep shopping rates. that just makes it a lot more sticky. It makes the lender that's working with you and the agent that's working for you like confused and not sleeping. It can jumble the process once you're in the process. But
And
when
then
you're
technically, I'm supposed to let the listing agent know that they're switching lenders.
yeah, and that's a hard conversation to have. Yeah,
If I really want to.
I think once you're in the deal, you should stick with the
Yeah.
deal, unless there's such
Sure.
all these topics that we say. And when I listen to your other podcasts and stuff, everything is worth a grain of salt because back to commissions being negotiable, everything in relationships have to be negotiable in this. There's some hard and fast rules. This is how you have to do it. This is what it costs. You have to sign this sheet. But a lot of this is just asking the right questions and knowing what's right for you. And you're going to get the right answer and a fair answer from any people that are really producing because they're not that hungry to decrease their commissions, to say, oh, that's okay, work with whoever you want, or, the yes people.
Right.
It's going to be I do think your deal will get done. I just think it's a lot more stressful than you need.
I agree. And going back to relating it to the trades, because I love the HVAC comment that you made, I see, what's the number one complaint that people have about dealing with contractors? Do you know what it is?
I know what I would say it is.
Go ahead.
That they're not clear on their final price.
Right. So that they're going to quote you and then they're going to either raise the price or maybe they just don't show up.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So what I find interesting about that is that to me is, again, like the $9.99 ribeye, where who do we blame? Do we blame the contractor or do we blame ourselves? Because at the end of the day, especially in this analogy with contractors, like contractors are trying to get the business and they're quoting these jobs, and why do they stop coming? Well, it's because they identify, I'm not making any money, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, well, their reputation's on the line and this and that, and it's like, well, not really, because they seem to continually get business, and the consumer continues to give business to the person that is just willing to do it for the least amount of money, and then instead of blaming themselves for being like, well, I did get 3 quotes and I went with the lowest one and I got burned, they'll do it again.
Mm-hmm.
They will do it again every
So
single time. And so the point I'm trying to make is, as you as a consumer are grinding on whatever the business is, a real estate agent, a salesperson, whatever, I can almost guarantee you that if you find whoever is going to be the least expensive, there is a solid chance that, just like your biggest fear on a contractor, one day they're just not going to show up. And when they don't, you can go ahead and complain and say, well, they screwed me over and this and that. But I think that it's important as a consumer, look inward a little bit. Look inward a little bit and say to yourself, like, you know what? I went and shopped. I got 4 different quotes and I went with the least expensive one. And are you really surprised that now, like, your closing is a week away and like you just can't get a hold of anybody and the phone just goes directly to voicemail? Like,
yeah.
Because I'm going to tell you right now, that person on the other end, because I've had this conversation with contractors. I had an electrician that did this to me, and I finally got him on the phone, and he's like, look, man, I'm not making any money on this deal, blah, blah, blah. And I think 8 out of 10 consumers would have said, well, this was the deal. I don't care if you're not making any money. You told me you were going to do the job for this amount, and that's why they block you. And I said, okay, well, let's sit down. Let's have a conversation. Let's figure out what the additional material cost is. Let's figure out what the additional hours that are going to be associated with it. And let's come up with an additional price that I am willing to pay for you to complete this. And he was like, you would do that? I was like, yes, let's get this done.
Yeah.
Let's get this deal done.
That's the best thing you can say is let's get this done, because I think there's so many things in real estate that people are saying like, oh, you just want the commission. You just want this, and which is normal to think about. But ultimately, agents and lenders as well are not getting paid if your homes aren't selling. And this is why it's a commission industry, because we are so motivated to wake up every day, make sure it sells, and to find you a place. We're not motivated to drive people around all day long to look at things. Now, granted, sometimes you're still like trying to figure out what neighborhoods and whatever, but the game is not like, let's see how long we can kind of coast around. The game is to sell a house or buy a house. Find you a place to call home. Let's get the deal done. It was interesting that you said that too. We can kind of wrap up with this. The idea that how much time do you think people spend doing their own research and their own, like when it comes to the contract, you made me think about this because we just recently bought a house, and I said, you know what? This is my house. It's not my first house, but it is. I want to renovate the kitchen and whatnot. And I said, I'm going to do all the demolition. I'm a pretty handy guy like you are. And so I ripped apart the kitchen. I knocked down walls. I did all this stuff. And then I'm realizing, like, I have to work too. So, like, I'm doing all this, like you did with this space here. And after it's all said and done, Kyle and I being more introspective, like you were just saying, look
Yeah.
inward, we looked and said, God, if we had just spent a week after closing to interview some companies and got a price, I guarantee you it would have been a lot less stressful and it would have been the same price or maybe just slightly more. But I mean, we spent what they say the average is to do a kitchen reno. And in my head, we were saving tons of money because I was doing a lot of the work.
Right.
It turned out to be, we got it all done in about 2 months, but it was so stressful.
Yeah.
And if, you can't really put a monetary value on all that stress, but now when I talk to clients, I can firsthand say, just take a week and hire some people and map out everything you want to do. Because a lot of these contractors, the good ones, will say, okay, we'll throw that in, da-da-da. Here's your total price for all of this. And it would have been done. And I would have just shown up and seen the progress each week, and it would have been exciting, and it would have been fun. And granted, it would have been a big check. But I wrote, I went to Home Depot. You can probably relate to this. Like, every other day because I got
Twice a
this.
day.
Then this was
Twice a
wrong,
day.
and then this, and then I stopped even returning things that weren't right. I was just like, I don't even want to go back to the service desk because it's like an extra.
Right.
So I have now all these tools and drill bits and things that I thought I needed, but it didn't end up working out that way. And ultimately, we ended up hiring somebody to finish the job. So I have all this leftover tools and paint and wood that I was going to do it myself.
Right.
And so anyway, why I say that is, I think we do this on with sites like Zillow and what are other sites that people search there?
Trulia,
Redfin, right? Where they're searching. We're searching night after night after night, sleepless nights, and we're like, I want to move. My lease is coming up in 6 months, and we've always said we want to buy. I think it's time. Blah blah blah. I don't know if our jobs are stable. I don't know if it's a good time to buy. Instead of scrolling for hours, just reach out to an agent. There's no expectation. It is no different than you spending time on Zillow. I promise you, except it is going to be cheaper and less stressful if you just talk to a professional who's in it every single day, who's looking at the market, who's going into the homes, who knows what you can get, who can look at your situation. Favorite question is, what's your credit score?
To me, are you asking me?
Yeah, nobody knows. And matter of fact,
well, I know mine,
I'm
but I
very
don't.
on top of it. And when you ran our credit, it was different because
Yeah,
you
of
guys do
course.
like a full pull.
Yeah.
But a lot of people don't even know that. Yet they're scrolling all these hours when they can't sleep. And I just wish they would contact me. I'm going to give you a site to scroll on that is much more personalized than Zillow.
Credit scores are like CrossFit. Those that have good ones want to tell you all about it.
They're like, join me.
Yeah.
And they're good.
Like-
But even the people that have good ones, they usually don't know the score. They'll be like, it's excellent. Trust
Yeah.
me, it's excellent.
Everyone has excellent. Everyone I talk to has the best credit.
Yeah.
Or terrible credit, because people who have terrible credit know it.
Or the people that have like in the middle, they're always like,
oh, it's the best.
terrible.
No, the people who are in the middle.
No, I always get like, I don't know.
I'm
It's
telling
like,
you,
it's
I'm-
like 670, and I'm
The
like,
people
that's
who
fine for housing.
no, the 670 people typically tell me that their credit's the best.
Really?
And then I pull it,
get
and
the
then they're
opposite.
like, oh, how? But I can't believe this. I'm
I
like,
think it's
yeah.
shocking. So know your credit score. But yeah, I think it's interesting how much we'll spend energy-wise because it feels good to do things on your own.
Yeah.
And we want to be independent and we want to search. But
Well, and we don't want to get sold.
Yeah, but I will let you search. I will just give you a resource that taps directly into me so I can keep track on what you're searching and help you be more efficient with your search. And I don't think any of us are like, no, I want to be as inefficient as possible. Like if I looked back on this construction project, it was so inefficient, so dumb.
Do you think there was some buffering to it? Do you know
What's
what I
that?
mean by that?
Yeah.
So it's a business term that I like to use where we as just humans try to find things to keep us busy so that we don't do the things that we probably should be doing. So I find this from like the lending thing. There are people that will contact me and have very long drawn out conversations about credit scores and interest rates and everything along those lines because I truly believe that they're not trying to waste my time, but they are. But they're wasting their time so that they can finish up this conversation and they have they feel a sense of accomplishment.
Like I started.
No, when in reality they probably should have like been doing their job or like maybe even mowing the lawn or whatever.
Yeah.
So like when the wife comes home, or just being cliche, when their wife comes home and like, why is the lawn cut? It's like, I was on the phone for an hour trying to figure out what we're gonna do for our mortgage.
Yeah.
And if I were to get in touch with that wife, I'd be like, that phone call could have been 5 minutes, right? So like, because I would
Maybe,
envision that you guys were exhausted with a lot of the things that was going on with this kitchen rehab, and I don't know. This is only something you could answer. and don't answer it out loud. But
Yeah.
because I catch myself sometimes on the weekends where I'll come and I'll do projects, you know, because I really do enjoy doing these things.
Mm-hmm.
And could I be doing things, you know, like I'm not dropping the ball per se, but like,
Yeah.
could I be making some extra calls?
Of
Could I
course.
be like
Yeah.
following up? It's like, absolutely. But I enjoy it. So it's kind of like, no, I wanted to build the picnic table that we just built in the backyard.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it took me 3 hours, but I could have made 3 hours of follow-up phone calls. Is that
Mm-hmm.
like, so I think about the buffering because I think a lot of times when people are scrolling or whatever, you're saying that we just covered it. But
Yeah.
I think part of it is like, I think it's a way to like trick your brain into thinking you did something when in reality you probably like could have saved a ton of time and done it
Oh,
differently.
100%. And I think we're all guilty of that.
Yeah.
And I tell people all the time, continue to do the buffering. I think it's important for us. It's human nature. However, involve a professional in the buffering.
Fair enough.
Just like, because, you know, I have a website that allows people to search on it, but as they're searching on it, it's letting me know which ones they're liking and all these things. Now, a lot of agents have this too, but the difference is I'm looking at it daily and I'm just keeping it in the back of my head. Now, if you're in that category of like, we're looking to buy in the next 2 years, I'm just aware of what you're looking at. You know, can I redirect you to maybe things that make a little more sense for your situation?
Sure.
But if you're just looking and buffering to talk to your wife or talk to your partner or have a conversation at a dinner party about how you're looking to buy soon because the market's
That's a big one.
but just interest is high.
Right.
Then-
Because I've talked to a bunch of
I
lenders.
mean, quite frankly, I think you and I feel the same way. Like, then yeah, use the sites. You don't need to reach out to anybody because I think there is this guilt of like, I'm wasting somebody's time when in your heart, you know, you're not ready to do anything.
Right.
But if you're ready to do something, and I consider ready to do something in 2 years. And if
a
you
good
have an
point.
agent that's not willing to work for you now, but you're going to buy within the next 2 to 3 years, they're not a career agent.
Agreed.
I think that's a great way to tell it because a lot of agents are like, no, well, they're not looking to buy in 3 months. It's like, well, do you think you're going to be out of the business in 2 years?
Right.
You know? So anyway, I think we could go on forever. So we probably should wrap this up.
Well, I'm looking over at this camera, and we are going to run out of actual time, literally.
We
so,
used all of the recording.
Yeah, yeah. So I had another podcast already on there, but when I looked at it, I mean, we're pushing 2 hours. So
Oh, no.
Yeah.
2 hours. I had to be somewhere.
well, then
my
we better
gosh.
wrap it up. I appreciate you coming. What time is it?
Jeez. No, I'm good. We got to go.
All right, we're good.
Okay.
So I appreciate you coming in. Always a pleasure.
Yes, as well.
Anything you want to promote? Anything anyone needs to know?
No, I did recently, as many of you know from the podcast, I'm a professional dance instructor by trade, and I am recently rolling out, so keep an eye out on my socials, that I'm going to be offering dance lessons as a way to meet new couples and continue solicitation,
Yep.
but in a way that I'm giving back too, because I think a lot of people like to learn to dance, whether it's for your wedding or just a fun hobby, physical fitness. And for me, it's fulfilling to connect and meet new people. But for you, it could be a great way to have a dance lesson and a non-real estate forced conversation
Sure.
if you have some questions for me. And first lesson's free. So definitely be looking out. I will definitely connect with you and hopefully can cross-promote with that. But my dance brand's called Dance House.
Okay.
And yeah, I'm teaching over in Austin, and we have some virtual options.
You just reach out to you directly? Is there a website? What do they
Yeah,
can-
so I'm putting all my businesses together. So basically, I do everything on this bad boy.
Okay.
You can text or call. If you're interested in setting up a dance lesson, set it up. If you already own a house and you just want to dance, we can do that. But the main goal of my continued dancing is for meeting new clients and getting into the conversation of kind of similar to this, having a
Yeah.
real estate conversation in an organic way. So
Answering those good questions, right?
yeah,
All right, man. Well, I appreciate it.
thank you, Matt.
We'll get this out shortly.